Hey guys, so this is my very first YouTube live, and I'm seeing the light is really not where I want it to be, but I'm working on it and I'll get better at it, I promise. So, this is just the inaugural, and it's also me practicing and figuring it out. I've realized that if I don't do things right away, well, I shouldn't say right away, but if I don't just jump in and do things, my perfectionism will keep me from doing anything. So here I am, and if you guys don't know already, you're on my author YouTube channel. I'm Melissa Lummis. I'm a paranormal romance, urban fantasy, and metaphysical fiction author. I'm also a wellness coach, but lately I've been really focusing on my writing, so I'm really excited about it. Again, sorry about the lighting. I'm working on it. I'm going to lean over the camera, so you guys hold on. And turn my lighting up. Much better. It makes me laugh, you guys. So yeah, I'm getting comfy. So welcome in. Say hi in the comments. Let me know where you're from. Again, I'm Melissa Lummis. I'm a paranormal, urban fantasy, and metaphysical fiction author. So if you don't know what metaphysical fiction is, think Paulo Coelho, stuff like that. Urban fantasy, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, and paranormal romance too. So this is, again, my very first YouTube episode, official episode. I've played around with it over the years, but I'm getting started. I'm going to make 5 o'clock on Fridays my happy hour, and I'm starting off with a live reading of my novel Enlightened. So I'm having a sale this week on the book. Actually, it's more than a sale. It's absolutely free. So if you jump on Amazon and look for Enlightened by Melissa Lummis, and I'll be putting the link down in the comments. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Again, I'm just jumping in, trying this out. I've never done live on YouTube before. I've been doing lives on Facebook on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. I have Magic with Melissa, and that's my show. All right, deep breath, everybody. So welcome again to my new show, or my new YouTube channel. It's been out here for a little bit. I just haven't done anything with it. So just to give you an idea of the kind of novels I write, this is my very first novel. And again, this isn't the actual book. This is my audio script because I'm doing an audiobook. But I thought it would be fun just to do it live, read it live for you guys. And by the time I'm done with it, there should be about 10 episodes, and it'll be the whole novel, basically a free audiobook. So there you go. All right. I have been thinking a lot about what 2021 is going to be like for me. And if there's anything 2020 has taught us, is that we cannot predict how things are going to turn out. So, we can do the best that we can. And you know what? Whatever plans we make, we have to be ready for those pivots, for those changes. And I've been thinking about the upcoming year. And while I would love to publish as many books as I possibly can in the next year, I realize that I'm a much better writer when I take my time. So there's going to be 2 new novels published this year. The first one is going to be my first book in a very new series, hasn't been published before, called the Soul Tracker Trilogy. And the very first book is Shadow of the Witch. And I've been working on this a long time. I've actually taken a hiatus from publishing back in 2017. Kind of a bummer. We got the news that my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and my mom has been kicking ass and kicking cancer. And even though it's been a really, really hard 3 years, 2021, she was diagnosed January of 2017, so it's 4 years. So to be diagnosed at stage 4 and be past all those times when it's supposed to be easier to treat, and for her to still be around after 4 years and kicking ass, I'm very grateful, and I feel like we've been very blessed. But I did need to take time away and really focus on my family, focus on my mom, focus on my kids, give everybody everything that I could in that moment. And that meant my publishing business went by the wayside for a little bit. Doesn't mean I wasn't writing, it just means I wasn't publishing. So while I was writing and while I was getting new stories down on paper, I just decided that I wasn't going to try to publish and promote. So just took a break from all that. So that brings me to 2021, and I'm ready to publish. I have the first novel ready to go, cleaning it up, getting it ready for beta testers, and then getting some advanced copies out to people who are interested in reading it early. And the only thing I ask in return, and it's not a have to, but if you could leave a review, I would love to get an advanced copy in your hands. And I'll put a link down to request an ARC in this the comments underneath. All right, so that's what's coming up. Also, crossing my fingers that we're going to have travel's going to be open again, and we'll be able to once again have gatherings because I believe it's in August, the end of August, I'm going to be attending the Orlando Reads Books conference. So that's a 3 or 4 day long conference, and the big thing is on Saturday there's an open to the public book signing, and there will be dozens of authors there offering their books for sale and to sign them. So I'm crossing my fingers. I've done this event in the past. It's been called Indie Book Fest in the past. Loved it. One of my favorite things to do. I try to go every year. Of course, last year was canceled, understandably, because it's hundreds of people crammed into a conference hall, so you don't really want that in the current situation. So hoping and crossing our fingers that by August of this year, Orlando Reads Books will be happening, and I would love to see you there. I'm also going to put a link to that in the comments as well. So this is the first time I've ever gone live on YouTube. So I've uploaded things before, so I usually get my episode notes together and upload that all together, but it's going to have to come up later. Just the way it is. I'm working on it. Okay, if you're out there and there's any problem with the audio or anything like that, let me know in the comments. I am moderating this myself, so if you're having a hard time hearing or the video isn't that great, let me know and I will do my best to correct it. At this moment, I'm doing these things on my own, so maybe in the future I will have somebody to help do all the different things that have to happen on these shows. So, all right, you guys, checking the volume and making sure that it's using my mic properly. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am going to read, it's probably going to be the first chapter or two of Enlightened. So bear with me, and I hope you really enjoy this. So this is my very first novel that I ever published. Not the first one that I wrote, but the first one that I published. And it is called Enlightened, and it is book 1 in the Of Light and Blood saga. Written by Melissa Lemus, copyright 2018. And here we go. So we open with a prologue. A warm night in May 1959, Clark College, Lewiston, Virginia. The basement room reeked of mildew and old books. A great crumbling tome rested on a heavy wooden table that harkened back to the days of the Salem witch trials. A ponytailed blonde set down the last burning candle, completing the circle of protection. "That's not right, Katie," a flat-topped young man teased as he pushed her playfully out of the way. She giggled and fell to her side, slapping his hand as he nudged the candle just a hair to the right. "Smart ass." She laughed. He turned to her, and their eyes held for a moment. It wasn't hard to tell how they felt about each other. "Come on, Joe, time's a-flying, and we've got a metaphysics final tomorrow. I'd like to pass." Another young, attractive guy in gray trousers tapped his wristwatch. "Don't flip your wig, Patrick. We're ready." Joe grinned over his shoulder. Katie shifted her blue eyes to Patrick, and the warm glow of her gaze was as steady and true on him as it had been on Joe. The corner of Patrick's mouth curled up. "Then let's begin." Patrick offered both hands to Katie, but she hesitated, studying him for a moment, before grabbing his hands and letting him pull her to her feet. When Joe turned around, Patrick dropped her hands, and she dusted off her green pedal pushers. "I'll never get these clean again. Mom will kill me," she fussed. Then the 3 college co-eds marched around their circle, mumbling a protection incantation under their breath. After 3 rotations, they stepped into the circle and knelt, facing each other. Joining hands, they struggled to maintain serious faces as repressed smiles twitched at their lips. They repeated another incantation. Asato ma sa gama, tamaso ma joitigama, mirtrama arm tam gamaya. Katie's soft schoolgirl voice balanced out the men's coming-of-age gruffness. The candle flames flickered as the energy they conjured coalesced around them, blowing in a gust through the circle. The wind intensified. Katie's ponytail danced behind her like streamers on the end of a bicycle handle. They raised their voices over the roaring pitch, changed the incantation, Om Klim Kaila Kaya Namaha, and a pinprick of light materialized in the center of their circle, expanding into a sphere. Its edges sizzled and danced in unison with the flickering candle flames. Its center was a blur of color and indistinct shapes, forming and dissolving. Now, Joe shouted. Over the commotion, they yelled as one, Om, Burbuva, Sva, Tatsarvanyama, Barga, Davasa, Dihamahi, Dayo, Yo, Na Pargadayat. And the smear of light blasted open into a swirling orb of green and blue, ringing like a singing bowl. Katie laughed in wonder and shock, and as if drawn by the sound, the orb rushed to her. It tore her hands from Joe's and Patrick's frantic grips and lifted her above their heads, suspending her within a shimmering ball. The howling wind and the shrill ringing continued, muffling her screams. As the orb shrank, Katie stretched out long and thin like a girl-shaped rubber band. Her eyes bulged with horror and pain. She thrashed in panic, desperately reaching for her friends. Her pleas for help echoed down the disappearing corridor of light as the orb sucked her away, then winked out of existence with the sound of a single flame being pinched out by wet fingers. The room rang with the sudden silence. The candle flames stilled. No, Joe whispered. No. Chapter 1. A cold night in January, present day, Jefferson, Virginia. Freezing rain pelted the big front window of Lodi Dupree's studio. She stared through the rivulet streaming down the darkening glass, wondering if she should have canceled class. It wasn't just the weather. That was the least of it. As she held the door open for the last of her yoga students, she tried to maintain an upbeat smile, but flashes of disturbing images from last night's nightmare made it difficult. If things didn't improve soon, she'd have to tackle the subject with Rachel. Maybe the bad dreams weren't merely nightmares. Maybe they were something more. Be careful out there, she encouraged the last person distractedly, realizing only belatedly that the straggler was Jeremy, of course. No worries, I think it looks worse than it actually is. Jeremy tucked his yoga mat under one arm, grinned down at her. You, want a ride? I've got the Jeep, so probably safer than that bug of yours. Lodi swallowed, shook her head. Jeremy stood just a tad too close. Despite the butterflies in her stomach, she made herself meet his gaze. I'm good. Meeting Rachel for dinner at Rosemary in time, she cleared her throat. She has a truck. We'll be fine. Jeremy reached out, moved her hand from the doorknob, stepping even closer. Lodi was caught between the door and his body. You want me to walk you over there? His husky voice hitched her breath. They were so close she could smell the soap he washed with, and the musky workout sweat drying on his skin. She exhaled sharply, turning to escape as fast as she could. But she tripped over the threshold and fell into his arms instead. Wide-eyed and shaking, she froze. And he didn't try some flirty line. He just stared down, his eyes asking questions she couldn't or didn't want to answer. I need to go. Rachel's waiting. And he pressed warm lips to her trembling ones. Her head swam with panic as he slid his arms around her, deepening the kiss. His hands wandered over her back, skating under her shirt hem. When his fingers grazed bare flesh, it dawned on her that she was kissing him back, and that her arms were wrapped around his waist, their stomachs melded together. Horrified, she shoved Jeremy away, breaking the kiss. "Stop," she hissed. Jeremy's eyes were glazed and half hidden by his shaggy blonde hair. His breathing was shallow as she turned away from his broad chest, only to smack into his hard, muscular arm that still gripped the door behind her. "Don't be mad, okay?" he whispered. Lust and revulsion tangled in her belly. "Jeremy, please." She caught her breath. "I'm not ready for anything like this." He finally moved his arm out of her way, the fever in his eyes cooling into careful concern. "Hey, I get it. No explanation necessary." He wrapped a hand around hers and gave it a mollifying squeeze. When she didn't pull back right away, he leaned his forehead against hers, and for a second, Lodi felt herself yield to his comforting gesture. But when he crept closer again, she tensed. She splayed her free hand against his chest and shrugged. "That's enough, Don Juan." He stumbled back, and she scooped up her bag of gear and scuttled through the door. The rain was as loud as gravel on tin as it hammered on the awning above their heads. Lodi fumbled to lock the door, then faced him. "Look, I know I'm sending mixed signals." Her voice shook despite her careful control, and she forced herself to really look at him. Taking in his flip-flops in this weather, and his long surfer shorts, revealing muscular calves. He returned her gaze steadily through his curtain of bangs and waited. I'm not ready." "Okay, I get that. Any ideas when you will be?" Her stomach did a flip, and she licked the corner of her mouth. "I don't know. It's still fresh, you know?" Jeremy flicked the hair out of his eyes. "Yeah," he said, his tone subdued. "I'm not gonna push. Don't worry." He smiled wider, showing teeth. "But you've got to know how damn hot you are, and that I've had a thing for you for a while. Maybe when I get back from this trip." Lodi relaxed her balled-up hands, and a warm blush bloomed across her cheeks. Maybe, although she honestly couldn't imagine it. Jeremy stepped out from the shelter of the covered doorway and strode away. Lodi watched him go, then sighed heavily and pulled her jacket out of her bag. Shrugging into it, she actually let herself contemplate the possibility. He seemed so confident that she would be ready, but would she be ever again? Right now, the thought of letting someone else get as close as David filled her with dread. At the corner of Thomas and Main, a mere block from her studio, Lodi was already soaked to the bone despite her coat. The streetlight was a muted blur in the heavy rain, and the green glow morphed into a muted yellow. She pressed her cold fingers to her lips to warm them while she waited for a walk signal. And as she did, without warning, a vision overcame her. A river of blood flowed across the oak floors in her home, and that voice, echoed through her head. Lodi bit back an audible yelp of fear and forced herself to breathe. Our nightmares were plaguing her while she was awake? She shook her head as if that might dislodge them. Rachel would have some insight, sure, but she'd probably want to call in her grandmother and the coven again, and a thought that made Lodi almost ill with unease. A jaw-clenching chill flowed up Lodi's spine, obliterating her disquieting thoughts. She gasped, glanced around for the source of her body's crazy reaction. A rumbling Harley coasted to a stop at the red light. The helmetless rider tossed a long black braid over his shoulder, and it trailed down his leather jacket as he glanced around. When his gaze fell on Lodi, her world wobbled. The rain splattered in big, slow drops. Her heart pounded in sluggish thuds in her ears. Their eyes locked, and she was aware of three things at once. The man was scary handsome. He had eyes that roiled with a dark light, and the tingles racing up her spine were off the charts. The light changed to green, and the mystery man revved his bike, then turned down Thomas Street. Lodi stared after him, forgetting the freezing rain, forgetting the disturbing dreams and vision, forgetting the attraction she felt for Jeremy that now seemed like nothing at all, even forgetting for one long moment the constant heaviness she dragged around everywhere since David. A car whizzed by as she crossed the street against the light. She couldn't have stopped herself even if she had seen it coming. Who was the motorcycle guy? Tires squealed. Lodi barely registered the horn blast as she pushed off the side of a warm Toyota CR-V and raised up on tiptoes to keep the motorcycle in her sights. A guy stuck his head out the car's window. "Damn, lady, you okay?" She waved a hand, her gaze riveted on the biker pulling into a parking space a couple blocks away. Did she know him? She had a strange feeling that she did, but she was almost sure she'd never seen him before in her life. He was parking under Rosemary and Thyme's striped awning, the same cafe where she was meeting Rachel. "Lady, I'm fine!" Lodi tripped over something in her hurry, her booted foot splashing into an icy puddle. The freezing water penetrated the shearling boots, soaking her toes. They ached instantly. Damn it. She tripped again and caught herself on the light pole, glanced down to see what the heck she was tripping over. The curb. She'd tripped over the damn curb. "What are you, drunk? Watch the hell where you're going, you idiot." The man rolled up his window, revved his engine, and roared away. But all Lodi registered was the man in black, bracing the Harley with damp, denim-covered legs. As he worked his fingers out of his riding gloves, Lodi tried to get a good look at his unusual aura. Although she never really got a good look at anyone's aura. She didn't have the abilities of a full-fledged, trained healer, unfortunately. But what she could make out, this guy's aura was dark and muted, like she was seeing it through a filter. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something was seriously wrong with the man. Death. He was cloaked in death. Her body tingled all over, a sign she was close to figuring something out. And then Rachel stepped out into the open gates of the cafe's alley. Lodi's heart raced. She tried to yell at her best friend to warn her to stay away, but only managed a hoarse whisper. Rachel exclaimed something to the man on the bike that Lodi couldn't make out, but her tone and stance made it absolutely clear Rachel knew him. The rider took his time angling the wheel and lowering the kickstand before heaving himself off the bike. Lodi was still a block and a half away, too far to do anything, but surely the other diners had noticed the situation. Surely someone was seeing the big, bad biker of death menacing the petite blonde. Rachel took a tentative step toward him, her lips moving. The man rumbled a response in a deep voice that made Lodi's stomach tremble. The two stood staring at each other. The cold air wheezed inside Lodi's chest, constricting and burning her lungs. She couldn't catch her breath. She stumbled and fell, her knees and palms slamming into the pavement. "Rachel!" she croaked. Lodi knelt, shell-shocked. Rachel knew him, but what? But he was danger personified, that's what. Every cell in Lodi's body vibrated with that knowledge. She knew it like she knew a lot of things without understanding why. Lodi squinted against the fluorescent streetlight. What exactly was she sensing? Her ability to read auras and energy had always been subpar. She wasn't an actual healer after all, and it was even more difficult to get a good reading when she was under duress. Before she could tease the vague notion she had about his nature into something more tangible, energy bubbled up her spine to the base of her skull, then zapped through her brain like an electric shock. She cried out, and the hair on the back of her neck stood on end. She tried to steady herself using the corner of the old brick building that housed Knackles, Jefferson's original bakery. She was used to a myriad of physical sensations. That was mostly how she read people's energy. But that zap, that was unprecedented. It terrified her to her very core. What the hell just happened? But she knew what she needed to do. She made herself take a deep breath, unfocus her gaze, and then let it out. In the stillness between breaths, her mind cleared, and pop, there it was. Like an image rising to the surface of one of those old 3D prints, Lodi suddenly knew what was wrong with the man. He wasn't human. Adrenaline exploded under her ribs, and once more she opened her mouth to yell, and once more failed. The words caught in her throat as another surge of electricity crackled up her spine. It morphed into sharp, excruciating tingles in her mouth and inside her skull. The pain forced her back to her knees, holding her head in both hands, gasping. She had the fleeting hope that this was all just another bad dream. But she could still make out the vampire holding Rachel's face in his hands. He leaned in, his cheek brushing along hers. Rachel nodded way too eagerly. Rachel! But Lodi's voice was drowned out by the steady pelting of the freezing rain, the cars driving by, and the live music from Griffin's Tavern across the street. The whole town was going on as if nothing were happening, as if her best friend weren't in mortal danger. Lodi reached out for the wall again, and with tremendous effort pulled herself up onto uncooperative legs. The image of Rachel and the ominous stranger embracing doubled and tripled in Lodi's vision, and then, just like that, the vampire was sitting on his bike and putting his gloves back on. The bike roared to life and sped down the street, taking its driver out of sight. The numbing electrical buzz slowly faded, leaving behind painful prickles, as if Lodi's whole body had fallen asleep and was waking up. Lodi didn't trust her legs to hold her, but she needed to get to Rachel. She needed to know she was okay. She pushed off the brick wall and staggered along the sidewalk, trying not to twist her ankle or worse. Rachel! But Lodi still couldn't raise her voice above a whisper. She couldn't take a deep breath. Rachel stood in the rain, her arms crossed over her chest, staring blankly after the biker. Lodi felt like she was in one of those nightmares where you're trying to call for help, but no matter how hard you try, how much you strain your throat, nothing comes out. She clenched her hands into frustrated fists and gave it everything she had. Rachel! Rachel jerked around, then shielded her eyes from the glaring light, and her frown transformed into a smile of recognition as she waved. She wasn't acting like anything was out of the ordinary. But vampires could mess with your head. Lodi ran the last few yards, tingling legs and waterlogged boot be damned. Are you okay? What did he do to you? Lodi grabbed at Rachel's face, twisting her jaw, searching her neck for a bite. Rachel's forehead bunched up as she pried Lodi's hands. What are you talking about? She glanced in the direction the biker had disappeared, then back at Lodi. He didn't do anything. Why? Come on. She led Lodi between the vinyl curtains and into the alley. I already got us the table. As they squeezed between tables packed with diners, Lodi had a horrible thought. What if everything she believed she just witnessed had been nothing but another panic attack-induced delusion? She rubbed her throbbing temples. The panic attacks had been coming more and more often and weren't caused by any trigger she could readily identify. They'd barely settled into the regular table when the waiter appeared. Good evening. What can I get you to drink? The dark-haired waiter asked. Rachel asked for a glass of Zinfandel, and Lodi fumbled through ordering a glass of Pinot Noir and a cup of black coffee. When the waiter left, Rachel regarded Lodi with narrowed eyes. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Lodi shrugged, reluctant to say anything now. What if she had imagined it all? No, you're not. Rachel leaned in, dropping her voice. Did you have another panic attack or nightmare or something? Lodi laced her hands tightly together, clenched against the shivers running through her body. Are you going to tell me who that guy on the bike was? Rachel peered at Lodi. We've been friends a long time. You don't get to change the subject that easily. Oh my God, you're shaking. You did have another panic attack, didn't you? No. Lodi waved a hand. Look at me. I'm wet and cold. She shifted in her seat. Besides, I think I had an asthma attack. You know, the cold, that's all. And I forgot my inhaler somewhere, but I'm fine. The coffee will help. Rachel studied Lodi for another second. Finally, she said, that was my uncle. She sighed and opened her menu. I haven't seen him in 10 years. She pretended to study the dinner offerings. Your uncle? Lodi flipped her menu open too. Rachel shook her head. He's not actually my uncle. He's an old family friend. They always referred to him as Uncle Wolf. Lodi surprised herself by laughing. Uncle Wolf? Rachel narrowed her eyes playfully over the menu. It's not that funny. Oh, yes, it is. It sounds like an Uncle Remus character. Lodi laughed again. Rachel laughed too. Okay, yeah, I totally get it. Oh, God. I remember Dad used to love making the voices when he read those stories to me. Now you're changing the subject. Lodi pointed at Rachel. Tell me more about this Uncle Wolf. Lodi set her menu down. Rachel's smile faltered. My uncle. She cleared her throat and pretended to study the menu yet again, as if they didn't eat there every Friday night. Like I said, I haven't seen him in a long time. The waiter appeared with their wine and Lodi's coffee. Are you ready to order? I'll have the grilled tuna with the fennel au gratin potatoes and broccoli rabe. Rachel handed him their menu. He turned to Lodi with a raised eyebrow. She stared at the menu, totally confused by it. Why couldn't she think of what she wanted? It'd been like this for a while, though. Little decisions, big decisions, they all felt beyond her. She smiled too hard. The chicken tortilla soup. Would you like the house salad with that? Lodi couldn't think. Did she want the house salad with that? Her smile broadened. Yes, with the house salad. That comes with the champagne vinaigrette, right? Yes, ma'am. Will there be anything else? Would there be anything else? She felt like thumping the side of her head to shake whatever was ever clogging up the works loose. No, thank you. Clearing her throat, she swirled her wine around the glass and took a sip. Realized it wasn't the normal brain fog that had settled over her the last 2 years. To her embarrassment, she realized her mind was completely occupied with something else. Uncle Wolf. She couldn't shake the feeling. He'd done something to her out there on the sidewalk. All that buzzing and numbness, the electric shock to the brain. Was that him? Was that even possible? Maybe when their eyes met back at the red light, had he messed with her mind, glamoured her as they called it? The thought tightened her chest and pissed her off. Lodi jerked. Yeah? Rachel raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you're okay? Lodi took a deep breath and set her glass on the table, reached for the coffee. Sorry. She sighed and made herself meet Rachel's gaze. I don't like him. The waiter? Why? Lodi shook her head, took a long sip of coffee, and the hot liquid burned all the way down her throat. I'm not talking about the waiter. Rachel wrinkled her nose. Who then? Lodi set her coffee down. When your uncle appeared, really weird things started to happen. Rachel's eyes brightened. She leaned in. You mean one of your insight things? What did you sense? He's a vampire, Rachel, Lodi blurted, with a dark aura. That wasn't at all how she meant to say it, but as David had often pointed out, she had trouble with the concept of tact. Rachel's face fell and she picked up her glass of wine. That's all? She sipped. Yes, I know. You do? He's been a vampire for a very long time. You probably haven't run into one as old as him, and at his age, that's probably just how an aura looks, dark. She sipped her wine. Did you sense anything else? The waiter arrived with a basket of bread and a small plate of olive oil. Your meals will be out shortly. Anything I can get you in the meantime? No, we're fine. When he'd left, Lodi answered Rachel's question. I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? Rachel dipped a piece of bread into the saucer of olive oil. Lodi did the same. I mean, I felt a lot of weird things that don't make any sense, like this tingling and then numbness. I mean, how old is he exactly? Well, I don't know exactly, but about 400 years, maybe more. Rachel rolled her eyes to the sky. Let's see, he was good friends with my great-great-grandfather, Blair Duval Brown. She bit her lip. During the Revolutionary War, however many greats that is. Okay, Lodi nodded. Maybe that was it. She brushed the crumbs off her fingers. You know, I don't see things for the most part. It's physical sensation that I have to interpret in intuitive knowing. And most of the time, I don't know what it means until it happens again. I don't think I've met a vampire older than a few decades. Yes, you have. That one back in college had to have been at least 100, Rachel mumbled around a mouthful of bread. Lodi sat very still. That one back at college. She swallowed. Ever since that encounter, she'd made a point of avoiding the places vampires like to haunt. Nightclubs, dark, candlelit, goth bars. It wasn't hard. It was totally not her scene. The only reason she'd been at that bar on the edge of town was because Rachel had insisted on going, and Lodi didn't want her to go alone. So, why haven't you seen him in 10 years, and why is he back now? What does he want? Why are you so interested in him? Rachel shoved another piece of bread into her mouth. Because he's a damn vampire. Lodi made a concerted effort to keep her voice low. For God's sake, you know how they are, and how their energy affects me in general, but Wolf? When he drove by, my spidey senses went ballistic. If he hadn't roared off when he did, I think all my circuits would have blown. Really? Wow. Rachel chugged her wine in excitement. You know, he's not your ordinary vampire, she said. He's different. Powerful. Rachel set her now empty glass on the table. But she leaned back in her seat, her gaze dropping to her lap. It may have been something else you're sensing. Lodi's chest tightened with into an aching ball at Rachel's tone. I haven't seen him in 10 years because my folks said we needed to take a break from each other. Rachel pulled her shirt cuff over her hand. The ache in Lodi's chest deepened. Why? What had he done? When Rachel spoke, her voice was gruff. My parents were worried about what was going on between us. Lodi's eyebrows shot up. Were you two? No. Rachel wrinkled her nose. Of course not, but... She glanced around, then whispered, We, exchanged blood. Lodi's mouth fell open. So, that's what you think I was sensing, the bond between you two. Rachel twirled her empty wine glass in both hands. I don't know. I thought the bond was clear, broken, but she lifted both hands in surrender. I don't know. I don't know now. now that he's back. Vampires. Lodi clenched her jaw, her neck tightened in anger. They don't care about anyone or anything except their bloodlust. Hey, Rachel sat up straighter. It isn't that way. It wasn't that way. We were... She cleared her throat. Experimenting with magic. Look, Wolf had this theory that he could augment my magic abilities, and it worked to some extent. But then my parents found out, and he agreed to leave me alone, and I haven't seen him until tonight. Lodi could feel the monster's cold breath on her neck outside behind the bar up against the grimy black wall. User, she hissed, barely containing the anger from boiling over into a rant. You're wrong. People stopped talking and turned to stare. Rachel lowered her voice, but sounded just as vehement, just as angry. Wolf is not a user or soulless. The other patrons slowly went back to their meals and conversations. Lodi made herself breathe through the unwanted memories, that dark bar. Back in college, his glowing eyes, the way he'd made her feel. Lodi wasn't seeing Rachel. Her vision blurred as she relived his touch, his voice, his smell. Was that why we were at that bar? Were you looking for Wolf? Rachel's throat convulsed. Yes. Lodi shivered as she tried to force the very physical memories away. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel looked lost for a moment, then shook her head. I'm sorry. It was so fresh and so raw. I thought maybe he would look at me differently, you know? Not want to be my roommate anymore. Or friend. Rach, you know I would never do that to you. Sure, yeah, now I do, but then I didn't feel all that good about what I'd done. She took a breath, opened her mouth to say something else, but Lodi was livid. What you did? He took advantage of you, Rachel. No. The room fell silent again, except for the hum of the patio heaters. You don't know what you don't know. Rachel's outburst had startled Lodi, and her hand jerked, splashing Pinot Noir on her white yoga pants. Damn it! How had the usual Friday night dinner date with her best friend gone so sideways? She set the glass down to inspect the stain, glancing around for something to clean it up. It wasn't like the knees weren't already a mess from her fall, and the hem splashed with road salt and grime. But red wine was red wine. She unraveled the white linen napkin from her silverware, hesitated over ruining it, then blotted at the wine anyway. She ignored Rachel, who was offering her a glass of ice water. Lodi wasn't angry at Rachel. She was well aware Rachel had a blind spot when it came to the supernatural. No, she was angry at herself. She wasn't handling anything very well these days. Not her friendships, not her family, not her life. And that thing with Rachel's vampire uncle out on the sidewalk had reminded her of an experience she thought she'd put behind her. The waiter appeared with their dinner, settled the plates and bowls, and replenished their drinks. Lily hadn't realized she was still distractedly dabbing at the red stain until Rachel sighed, "Oh, for Pete's sake." She got up and gently touched the red stain with her fingertips. The wine extricated itself from the fabric's weave in tiny, curling tendrils that trailed after Rachel's fingers as she lifted her hand. She stood and guided the red swirls until they hovered above Lodi's wine glass. With one tap of her index finger, the wine fell back into the glass. Lodi couldn't help grinning. Neat trick. Lodi raised her glass. No trick, just honest-to-God magic. Rachel winked and clinked glasses with Lodi, who felt weak with the relief. They were good again. Rachel! Lodi! What a pleasant surprise! A white-haired gentleman approached their table. Patrick, my goodness, what are you doing here? Rachel was on her feet in an instant, hugging her surrogate grandfather. Is Nan okay? It's good to see you, too. There was a teasing lilt to his voice. Rachel laughed. Okay, you know what I mean. This is a little out of your way for dinner. Your Nan is fine, no need to worry. He turned his attention to Lodi. Lodi, my heavens, it's been a while. Lodi was already out of her chair, holding out her arms. Professor Patrick Lynch crumpled her in a bear hug, the smell of pipe tobacco and licorice lingering on his breath. She asked, have you been doing your exercises? Every day, he said, releasing her. I have to say, I was a little skeptical, but your routine has really worked wonders on my back. He studied Lodi's face a moment, concern in his brown eyes. So is Nanny here? Rachel peered around him, looking for her grandmother. No, dear. She's grading papers in her office at the university. He and Katie taught metaphysics together at Clark University in Lewiston, over an hour's drive away. What are you doing this far out? Rachel sat back down. Meeting an old friend for a late dinner. Patrick searched the alley over the heads of the other diners. He's passing through on his way back to D.C., but doesn't seem to be here yet. Maybe he's at the bar. He glanced at his wristwatch and smiled back down at the girls. Did your grandmother tell you I'm flying out tomorrow? Oh, yes, she did. Ireland, right? Who'd you get to cover your classes? Rachel wrinkled her nose. Not Holden McGee, I hope. Holden is a fine young man, if a bit pedantic. Patrick waggled his eyebrows, making her laugh. A bit, ha! He leaned down to whisper in Lodi's ear. I know it's been tough, but you know we're all here for you. He kissed her cheek and straightened, then suddenly looked mildly alarmed, as if he just remembered where he was and that he had someone to meet. Okay, well, I'll let you two finish your meal. Good to see you, girls. I'm going to check inside at the bar. It's not like Mr. Harris to be late. And he trotted off to find his dinner companion. Bye, Patrick. Rachel gave a little wave as he walked away, but a small frown was forming. Bye. Lodi twisted to the back of her chair, hands on the rail, watching him walk away. He okay? He seemed distracted. I wish he and Nan would get married already, Rachel muttered. Lodi turned back, surprised. What? Rachel raised her eyebrows and poked her fork at her potatoes. Tell me you don't see it. See what? That they care about each other? Yeah, sure, but get married? Lodi wasn't sure where this was all coming from. Come on, they've been in love for as long as I can remember, but no one talks about it, especially not them. Why would they? It's no one's business but their own. Rachel huffed. Yeah, I know. She sipped her wine. You know what I think? I think it's because they still feel guilty. You mean about your Grandpa Joe? Lodi wasn't clear on all the details around Rachel's grandfather's death, but she did know the three of them had been college friends. Patrick, Katie, and Joe. Very close friends. Rachel pushed her potatoes around some more. Maybe. But I have a sneaking suspicion it has something to do with what happened their senior year. Lily glanced around the alley, but Patrick was gone. You mean the thing no one talks about? They love each other, Lodi, and they won't do anything about it. Why? You know what I think? Lodi pushed her untouched bowl of soup away. I think it's weird to obsess about your grandparents' love life, or lack thereof. Rachel rolled her eyes. Okay, yeah, I get it, you're right. But it's just something that's always bugged me. They fell into an easy silence as they finished their meal, and despite her huge wish to resist, Lodi couldn't keep her thoughts from returning to the vampire wolf. As they waited for their bill, Lodi pressed her lips together. She had to know something, but didn't want to piss Rachel off by bringing the subject back up. But she just had to know. So, why is he back? She tried to seem like whatever the answer was, it wasn't a big deal, because it shouldn't be. Not to her. She shouldn't feel this fascination, right? Who was Uncle Wolf to her anyway? I'm not sure. He said it was time, and Rachel hesitated. And he needs to talk to me about his dream. At Lodi's wrinkled brow, Rachel hurried to explain. He has these prescient dreams sometimes, symbolic kind of dreams that foretell important events. He gets them once in a blue moon, and he said it's really important this time, something he needs to talk to me about. Lodi raised an eyebrow, but Rachel wasn't looking at her anymore. She was digging in her purse, a serious frown on her face. You still need that ride home? And that's the end of chapter 2. So we'll stop there. So I hope that you enjoyed the first 2 chapters and that your interest has been piqued. If you have any questions about what I just read or the story in general, pop them into the comment section. I, again, want to let you guys know that the novel that I'm reading live to and will continue, I will be completing this. I'm hoping to do every Friday. I might throw in a couple more, but I'll definitely put up a notification when I do. But the novel is Enlightened, and I know it's backwards. And it's part of the Of Light and Blood saga. There are 3 full-length novels in it and 2 short stories, and they're numbered 1 through 5. You can find them on Amazon, Enlightened by Melissa Lummis. I'll put the link in the comments down below. And again, if you go and get it now, it's free, I believe, until Monday. So I wanted everybody to get a chance to check it out. I don't do frees on my novels very often. That's just something I don't do. I might do a sale at 99 cents, but just to get it out there and give everybody a chance to get the novel for free while I'm doing this live reading, I set it out for free. All right, that is it for today. I'll be back with the next couple chapters. It should take about 10. There's 24 or 28 chapters in this novel, so okay, maybe it's going to take about 14 episodes before I get the whole thing, but maybe I can get 3 chapters in next time. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me on my very first YouTube live. I hope this worked out okay. It looked like I was having trouble with the sound, but I can see the bar moving, so there actually is sound. And I will be checking the comment section. This is going to get posted afterwards, so if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. Also, subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's author Melissa Lummis. I guess AuthorTube is what they're calling it. So subscribe to get notified when I go live again and to get notified when I upload new videos too. Also give this a like so that YouTube knows you want to see this, and hopefully it will get shared. And don't hesitate to leave comments. All right, you guys, I'm sending you so much healing, love, and light today, and I want you to take really good care of yourselves. Have a wonderful New Year's Day. Hopefully you have some wonderful meal planned, and take really good care of yourself. Bye, you guys.